Good morning. Today we're going to talk about a subject that's got a lot of mystery around it. The mitochondria. Those are the powerhouses that give all your cells all their energy. There's so much out there that's just false information on these. People have all these programs to work to try and restore mitochondria, and we've tested a whole bunch of those. They don't work. There's some definite reasons why, and they're missing some key issues. So we're going to cover those today. So this is really, really an important one. And it fits in with the whole toxicity theme that we've been going on for a while. So this is your Health Reclaimed, where we expose the roots that fuel Lyme and chronic illness. The whole point of doing that is to get you to understand how these roots arise, how they function, how they destroy your health. Because without understanding these things, you're always going to be directed into the wrong kind of care without any results whatsoever. So this is so you can restore your health and reclaim your life. I'm Dr. Brad Montagne, a veteran functional medicine doc. We typically get people who've been working oftentimes for decades with multiple other docs, never got anywhere at all. We get them their health and their life back because we have a different approach. We understand more. We have a deeper sense of testing that we do. We walk with people closer. We manage everybody's case, and we do that on a one-by-one basis, no generic protocols. And that's what it takes to really turn these things around. So let's jump into this. We got to start with the background because everything builds off of backgrounds, and it's critical to know what's going on with the mitochondria and why all these mitochondrial resuscitation protocols don't work. Expensive, and they really don't work. So we'll back up and go through what got us to this point. We look at the gut health. Hippocrates said all health issues stem from the gut, whether you're building good health or destroying it. And that's held to be true. If you hold your fingers up in front of your face and look at your fingers represent the lining of the gut called microvilli. Those microvilli increase the surface area of the gut about 400 times. The microvilli, they secrete a mucus that fills the space between the microvilli, caps over the top, and it's in that mucus where all of your microbes live and grow. When you look at the electron microscopes, it's obvious the food can't touch the microvilli. It's the microbes that move in and out of the mucus, go interact with the food, do the digestion, bring the nutrients back. And that's a consistent thing through all life forms. When we're talking with soil, feeding plant roots, it's the microbes that convert the nutrients in the soil into absorbable forms for the plants. The plants in turn give about 25% of their sugars, their energy they produce, to those microbes to keep them there, and that's how life grows. So we do the same thing in our guts. Virtually all animal kingdom does the same thing. And whenever there's any chronic inflammatory issue going on, whether that's food intolerance, medications, chronic stress, toxicity, there's a multitude of things that cause it. But what happens is it makes those microvilli atrophy. It's like closing your fingers, making fists, rolling up, so you just look at your knuckles. Not much space to make the mucus. There's no place for the healthy microbes in the gut to stay there. They wash down the toilet, then pathogens start to grow, and those pathogens create super toxic reactions and responses. We started following what those toxins do throughout the rest of the body. Gut lining, where all the microvilli are, that's one of your detox organs. The colon wall, the wall of your lower and 5 feet intestine called the colon, that's filled with microvilli also. That's their second detox organ. The microbes that grow in the mucus in between the microvilli and capping over the top, that's your third detox organ. And your liver only catches what's the gut doesn't process in the first place. So the liver gets really overwhelmed when the gut atrophies and start to leak and pathogens start to grow. That goes systemic. Two of the first organs get beat up so they can't function properly is a thyroid and adrenal. Last time we were talking about what happens with the thyroid. Well, the reason why the mitochondria follows the thyroid talk is for this real simple reason. And this is what everybody ignores. Everybody clinically just doesn't pay attention to this. And this is really the key for restoring energy. The size of your mitochondria, the number of mitochondria in the cells, and the activity level of the mitochondria is all directed by the thyroid hormones. Yeah, you heard me right. It's all directed by the thyroid hormones. So if we have toxic muscle cells, which was where most of the conversion of the pro-hormone thyroxine gets converted, it's about 3/4 of it, gets converted in the muscle tissue. If those muscle tissues are toxic, those conversions tend to go to the reverse side, and those hormones are inert. So they don't have a biological activity, but they register up in the back of the brain called the hypothalamus as if they do. They just don't have a biological function. So when we're producing too much of those reversed hormones, or we can put it another way, when we're not producing enough of the biologically active thyroid hormones, we're talking primarily T4 and T3, T2 has a significant biological function. They don't study hardly anything other than T4 and T3. But it goes T4 converts to T3, T3 to T2, T2 to T1. They haven't studied T1 at all. They've done a little bit of studies in T2. They concentrate most of the studies on T3 because they believe that's where all the biological activity comes from, but they haven't even really looked at half of the whole progression, T2 and T. So we don't really know from scientific studies what those really do. What we do know is the active thyroid hormones control how big the mitochondria are, how many they are in the cell, and how active they are. So if we depress the thyroid hormone, how much mitochondrial resuscitating nutrients are you going to need to take to restore your mitochondrial function? That's the big question that everybody ignores. And when we look at the mitochondrial resuscitating nutrients, NAC is a really big one as far as that goes. It has no clinical effect if people have depressed thyroid function and depressed thyroid hormones, nor do the adaptogens, nor do the minerals taken with that, nor do any other nutrients. So somebody with a clinically astute mind has to look at that and go, okay, so what's the missing link? What are we really missing here? And the real issue with mitochondrial dysfunction is the same toxicity that dysregulates the thyroid. Now, we can pull up and look at electron micrograph pictures of mitochondria that are dying. Too much toxicity, and it's like they'll shorten. You'll start to lose the wall of the mitochondria. There's folds inside that go up and down where you get all the changes that create the energy inside the mitochondria. Those start to atrophy. The wall starts to disintegrate. As it starts to disintegrate, you have this progression of a mitochondria that dies. And I've used slides like that in presentations for a long period of time, probably decades. And this is really the key with everything. So if you take a mitochondria that's dying and you throw as much NAC as you possibly can at it, it's not going to do anything. You have to find what the toxins are, remove the source, upregulate the detox pathways before you can really do anything at all with the mitochondria. Same thing with all the other metabolic functions. And that is one of the hardest things to do. There's not one program that addresses the reality of what's going on with impaired detoxification. Almost all clinicians in all professions are using some generic protocol, and it absolutely doesn't work to restore things. First of all, they don't even realize that there's 3 other detox organs other than the liver. No one's paying attention to that out there in all of healthcare. It's just, you don't hear people talk about it. But it's an absolute fact. Pharmacy knows that, and the reason why they have to increase the doses of their pharmaceuticals is because there's so much that gets denatured in the gut wall. The same chemical pathways that we use to detox, one of those chemical pathways, cytochrome P4 pathway, that same pathway is what we use to absorb the nutrients in our gut. So it lets you know that system has to be operating really well for you to be able to absorb any of your nutrients whatsoever. So why do people ignore this? Because we live in a cut and paste world where people don't take the time to figure out what's going on, and they just go grab some information from someplace. They don't even check it out to see what's going on. You have almost no doctors studying physiology, and they don't realize what they're talking about. Makes no sense in how the body works, which is what the study of physiology is. This is why I'm always talking about mechanics. I've got a mechanical mind, and I've been in a mechanical field most of my life. Construction is all about mechanics. Electrical work's all about mechanics. The workings of motors is all about mechanics. Do fabrication, it's all about mechanics. You look at everything, it's all about mechanics. The way our bodies work, it's all about mechanics. And we have to look at this from a functional, logical, mechanical standpoint to make any sense of this and start to really change people's lives. So we have this downward cascade of the gut leaking, the gut not absorbing nutrients well. We have this autoimmune response going to destroy the gut wall that makes the leaking gut become like holes big enough to drive Mack trucks through. There's no selective introduction of the contents in the gut to the bloodstream. Once the gut starts to leak bad like this, and autoimmune responses are there, we get these super antigens that create all kinds of autoimmune responses that leak out of the gut when all this happens. And this is what's really setting the stage for mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, there are some foods that will help restore adrenals, will help restore mitochondrial function. Avocado is one of the biggest foods out there as far as that goes, but that won't do any good unless you lay the foundation of what you really need to address all this, which is to start dealing with the gut wall. It's amazing to take mitochondrial resuscitating nutrients and start throwing that with a whole boatload of adaptogens at people and watch hardly any change go on whatsoever. If you don't address the food intolerances, you have not addressed one of the biggest factors that creates a leaky gut and the inflammation that atrophied the gut lining. And the testing for that is 2-3% accurate. You don't have many clinicians understand how to really test those, and they don't have an understanding how important they are. I just talked to somebody this morning who just started a week ago. They were only about 60% of their calorie intake when we started, and a significant amount of their diet was things they're toxic to. And they were eating a ton of sugar. So a lot of their calories was coming off of that. And then we removed all that, and they got in a crisis, sent a SOS, and we evaluated some things, and it went from 60% of their calorie intake down to 50. And there was only about 50% of protein intake, about 30% of oils, 30% of fiber. Carbs had dropped down from 85 down to about 60%. And That's a crisis in motion that you can't do anything to bring somebody back out till you discover the problem. You ask some questions, becomes obvious. And this is where most people have a problem starting with anyway, is with their diet, especially when they're starting at a very severe calorie deficit and nutrient deficit, and then you remove their toxic foods and they don't know how to substitute those into healthy things. So you have this, it's like a free fall, and you have to help walk them back out of that hole. This is exactly the case with mitochondrial issues. The mitochondria is not the problem. When you look at the thyroid dysfunctional problems, the thyroid is not the problem. Thyroid might be putting out adequate thyroxine, but it's the toxic tissues that won't allow it to convert into healthy, functional, viable hormones, T4, 3, 2, and 1. So we start looking at the mitochondrial issues. It's the same issue going on. We've got these toxins that are so toxic, it's starting to tax the mitochondria so much that they atrophy, they break down, and they die. No amount of adaptogens, no amount of nutrient is going to change that till you deal with the real issue. The real issue is the gut, paired detox pathways, paired elimination, all turning into too toxic an environment throughout the entire body, and improper hormone conversion to nurture the tissue we're looking at. So the same thing with the thyroid is the same thing with the adrenal. You have to heal the gut up, deal with the toxic influx, increase the elimination, and then the hormones start to become healthy, the environment starts to become healthy, and you start to rebuild new mitochondria and heal the old ones so they function the way that they needed to be in the first place. I've said this before, I'll say it a whole bunch of times more. The gut's the hardest organ in the body to heal. We've got 3 people we're working with that had their thyroids either nuked with radioactive iodine or a significant amount cut out surgically. All stopped once we started rebuilding things, fixing the real problems. They got direction from pharmacists, usually the best one to get direction on this because they're the experts in medications and they really save medical doctors a lot of hassle. They are the check and balance for medical doctors for not making bad mistakes. And they're generally the best experts as far as getting off this. They get some direction, they wean off their thyroid supplements, glandulars, medications, their thyroid function comes back. But you've got to set the stage and you've got to have healing progressing going forward and the gut healing up and all these things going right before you do this. You can't just do this without taking care of the issue. And all those people with their thyroid missing, whether it was nuked or cut out, they all have normal thyroid function because we dealt with the root issues. Mitochondria is the same way. You have to deal with the root issues, which are distant from the mitochondria. You can't address the mitochondria. You have to address the source of toxicity, the source of what's making the thyroids convert improperly into reverse hormones or not converting at all. And then the mitochondria just restore themselves. It's amazing how the body works when you set everything up. So capsulize this. The mitochondria are not a rebellious organ. It's not because they want to shut down. You can't throw nutrients at it and fix the problem. The problem really is toxicity. The toxicity primarily comes out of the gut. That's what depresses the thyroid function and depresses the conversion of the thyroxine from the thyroid into the active forms of T4, 3, 2, and 1. When the tissues are too toxic, it tends to drive those conversions into a reversed form, which is biologically inactive. And between the biologically inactive hormones, thyroid hormones, which control your mitochondria, and the toxic state, the mitochondria, they atrophy, they disintegrate, they die, and you can't change that until you deal with the root issue, which is the gut leaking, gut toxicity, impaired detox pathways, impaired elimination. That's the key. So, hope you enjoyed this. You should tag this one, send it out to your friends, because everybody that's got chronic health issues has mitochondrial problems. There's not an exception. Everyone has it. And this is the reason why. If you really want to work with somebody who knows how to restore your function, you should go to our website, healthfortheyou.com, pull up the consult page, fill out the forms and send them to us, and we can talk to you about how to restore your health and really get back on track. So thanks. We release these every Monday and Thursday. We'll see you next time.